Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. The Galactic Council banned humanity. Now they fear our empire. The Galactic Council, an assembly of the most advanced alien civilizations, once saw humanity as nothing more than a violent, unpredictable species. We were denied entry, labeled as a danger to galactic peace, and cast out like a rabid animal. At first, humanity protested. We tried diplomacy. We sent ambassadors, scientists, and leaders to plead our case. We had earned our place among the stars, we argued, but the Council would not listen. They saw our wars, our history of conflict, and our ruthless adaptability, and they decided the galaxy was safer without us. So they banned us. They forbade trade with human colonies. They exiled our fleets from neutral space. They ensured that no species would share technology with us. They believed they had condemned us to isolation and slow extinction, but they had underestimated us. In the darkest corners of space, humanity did what it had always done best. We survived. Cut off from the comforts of intergalactic civilization, we built our own empire. We adapted. We innovated. We reverse-engineered alien technology, improved it, and then surpassed it. The exiled colonies forged an armada, each world dedicated to one purpose: vengeance. By the time the Galactic Council realized their mistake, it was too late. The first human dreadnoughts arrived in the Zixian cluster, a region long thought impenetrable. Their defenses crumbled within hours. Council forces, used to fighting in neat formations, were unprepared for human warfare, unpredictable, brutal, and devastating. One by one, their member races fell. And now, as our fleet surrounds the Council's home world, their leaders, who once dismissed us as savages, tremble before the empire they tried to destroy. Their last transmission was a desperate plea. "We were wrong, humanity. Please have mercy." But mercy is for those who deserve it. The Galactic Council chamber, once a symbol of unshakable power, now reeked of fear. Holographic displays flickered with images of burning worlds, shattered fleets, and the unstoppable advance of the human war machine. The once mighty civilizations that had ruled the stars for millennia were now scrambling for survival. High Chancellor Vorkin, a towering reptilian from the Drazul Dominion, slammed his claws against the council table. "How did this happen?" he roared, his voice trembling with barely contained panic. "We exiled them. We cut off their resources. They should have perished." A soft, slithering voice answered him. "And yet here they are," murmured the Salari envoy, her crystalline eyes dim with despair. "More powerful than any of us imagined, more vengeful." They had underestimated humanity's tenacity, their sheer stubborn refusal to die quietly. Decades ago, when the Council had deemed humanity unfit for the galactic community, they had believed they were making the right choice. Humans were violent, reckless, warlike, a species that had torn itself apart countless times. The Council feared that if humanity were allowed to spread unchecked, they would bring ruin to the fragile peace of the galaxy. So they exiled them. Humanity had pleaded, begged for a chance, but their pleas had fallen on deaf ears. Now, their silence was filled with the roar of their war engines. The destruction of the Zixian cluster had been the first sign. The humans had stormed through it, annihilating defenses that had stood for centuries. Then came the fall of the Vashari trade conglomerate, worlds burned, cities reduced to rubble, entire fleets torn apart. Reports described human soldiers moving with ruthless efficiency, their technology surpassing anything the Council had anticipated. Now the humans were here, at the doorstep of the Council's home world. A shiver ran through the chamber as the planetary defense grid detected their arrival. The great warships of the United Terran Dominion filled the void, their dark metal hulls absorbing the light of the twin suns. They bore no insignias, no markings, just the cold, merciless advance of an empire that had not forgotten. The Council's last hope, the Grand Armada, had been destroyed at the Battle of Vestus Prime. The footage had been horrifying. Thousands of ships obliterated in coordinated strikes, human AI-guided weapons cutting through their formations with surgical precision. A desperate message was sent to the human flagship. "We were wrong, humanity. Please have mercy." The reply came moments later, in a voice that sent a chill through every being in the chamber. "Mercy. The voice, deep and cold, belonged to Grand Admiral Kale Draven, Supreme Commander of the Terran Dominion. Did you show us mercy when you left us to die in the void? Did you offer kindness when you exiled our children, starving and alone? Did you hesitate when you stripped us of our future? Silence, then the final words before the invasion began. We have not forgotten. We have not forgiven. The comms cut off. Moments later, the bombardment began. The first strikes were precise, surgical. Humanity had long since mastered the art of war, and they had no intention of wasting resources on a prolonged siege. Orbital rail cannons fired tungsten rods at near-light speeds, bypassing energy shields and slamming into the planetary defenses with devastating force. Plasma bombardments followed, vaporizing defensive turrets and shield generators in blinding bursts of fire and molten steel. On the surface, the once proud council cities, bastions of civilization for millennia, erupted into chaos. Civilians scrambled for shelter, the planetary defense forces struggling to mount any form of resistance. But they were unprepared. The council had fought wars before, against pirates, against insurgents, against rival empires, but they had never fought humans. The first wave of dropships descended through the burning sky, their armored hulls shrugging off the scattered anti-air fire. The moment they landed, the hatches burst open, and human soldiers poured out in disciplined formations. These were not the desperate survivors the Council had abandoned decades ago. These were the elite warriors of the United Terran Dominion. Exosuits hummed with kinetic shielding, their alloyed plating nearly impervious to conventional weaponry. Their rifles, sleek and compact, fired magnetically accelerated projectiles capable of shredding through even the toughest alien armor. They moved with the precision of a species that had been fighting wars since before they even left their home world. Resistance was swift but futile. Council forces, composed of multiple alien species, attempted to hold the defensive lines. The Drazul warriors, massive reptilian brutes, charged into melee, expecting to overwhelm the human infantry with brute force. But humanity had mastered close combat long ago. Power-augmented gauntlets met claws and fangs. Blades of pure energy clashed against reinforced combat knives. The Drazul, creatures that had once been feared for their unmatched strength, found themselves outmatched by the sheer ruthlessness of human soldiers. Salari battlecasters, their crystalline bodies shimmering with psychic energy, tried to strike back with mental attacks, overloading human minds with waves of pain and confusion. It had worked against other species before, but against humans, the Salari learned too late that human minds were different. A lifetime of struggle, war, and hardship had forged humanity into something terrifying. Their willpower, their sheer refusal to break, made them resistant to the psychic assaults. Worse, the Dominion had studied psionics in secret, developing countermeasures that turned the Salari's own abilities against them. Within hours, the outer defenses of the Council's capital were gone. The once glorious High Spire, the heart of the Galactic Council, now stood exposed. Smoke and flames rose into the atmosphere, a stark contrast to the pristine, towering structure that had once symbolized the unity of the galaxy. The Council leaders had fled to the deepest sanctum of the spire, surrounded by their most elite guards, but they knew it was only a matter of time. And then the doors to their chamber exploded inward. Through the smoke and fire, a lone figure stepped forward, clad in sleek black armor adorned with the insignia of the United Terran Dominion. His face was partially scarred, a testament to the wars he had fought and survived. His cold gray eyes scanned the chamber, settling on the cowering council members. Grand Admiral Kale Draven had arrived. Behind him, his elite soldiers spread out, their weapons trained on the trembling alien leaders. Silence filled the room. Draven took a slow, deliberate step forward, his boots echoing in the vast chamber. He let the silence linger, let them feel the weight of their impending doom. Finally, he spoke. "You thought you could bury us, that we would fade away. You were wrong." The council members shuddered, their desperation palpable. One of them, a Salari elder, fell to her knees, her crystalline body dimming. "Please," she whispered, "spare us, we surrender." Draven tilted his head slightly, considering her words. Then a cold smile formed on his lips. "Surrender," he murmured. He gestured toward his soldiers. You exiled us to the void, left us to die, but we did not die. We thrived. We built an empire greater than yours, and now you will see what happens when humanity is denied." With a flick of his wrist, his soldiers opened fire. The Galactic Council, once the rulers of the stars, died in a hail of human gunfire. Draven turned, stepping away from the carnage, his voice echoing through the burning chamber. "Welcome to the age of humanity." The Galactic Council was dead. Their blood stained the once pristine floors of the high spire, their bodies crumpled in a heap of failure and regret. The rulers of the stars, the ones who had banished humanity, had met their end at the hands of those they had sought to erase. Grand Admiral Kale Draven stood among the fallen, his expression unreadable. Around him, his soldiers moved with mechanical precision, securing the chamber, ensuring that no one remained alive to challenge their victory. The Dominion had come and they had conquered, but this was only the beginning. Draven turned to his second in command, a hardened warrior named Commander Adrian Hale. Her battle-worn armor was still smoking from the fight, and her piercing blue eyes scanned the room with clinical efficiency. "It's done," she said, her voice laced with satisfaction. Draven nodded. "Send the transmission." Hale didn't hesitate. She activated her wrist console, linking directly to the Dominion's command network. Within seconds, the message was sent across every channel, every remaining stronghold of the former Galactic Council. The words would haunt the galaxy forever. "The Council is no more. The Dominion rises." Across the stars, the news spread like wildfire. Races that had once bowed to the Council's authority now faced an uncertain future. Some celebrated, having long despised the corruption of the ruling elite. Others trembled in fear, knowing that humanity's wrath had only just begun. Draven turned his gaze toward the shattered window of the spire, overlooking the ruined capital city. Smoke billowed into the atmosphere, fires still raging where Dominion forces had struck. The streets below were littered with the remnants of failed resistance, alien soldiers who had died trying to defend a dying empire. He exhaled slowly. This was the justice humanity had waited for, but vengeance was not enough. "Status on the Council's fleet?" he asked. Hale checked her data pad. "What's left of them is scattered. Some tried to flee to the outer colonies, but our interceptors are already hunting them down. The largest group is holding out in the Farid Nebula, hoping to regroup." Draven's lips curled in a smirk. Hope is a dangerous thing to have when facing humanity. He turned to the hollow map projected before him, studying the last remaining territories still clinging to the remnants of the old order. "Their empire is in ruins," he murmured, "but we won't stop here." Hale raised an eyebrow. "You're thinking about full annexation." Draven met her gaze. "They never gave us a home among the stars, so we took one for ourselves. Now we take everything." A quiet tension filled the air as the full weight of his words settled on those present. The Dominion had already proven its strength, but conquest was only part of the equation. Now they had to build something greater. Draven turned to his officers. "Inform all Dominion fleets. Every council world, every stronghold, every last remnant of their empire will submit or burn." The order was given. Across the galaxy, Dominion warships moved with terrifying speed, sweeping through the remains of the old order like a firestorm. Once mighty civilizations fell one by one, their leaders surrendering before the might of humanity. Some chose to resist, believing they could stand against the new rulers of the stars. None succeeded. The Salari home world, once a sanctuary of peace and enlightenment, now bore the banner of the Dominion. The Drazul strongholds, legendary for their warriors, lay in ruins, their rulers executed for their defiance. Even the Vashari, the wealthiest trade lords in the galaxy, found themselves kneeling before humanity, their riches now fueling the war machine that had dismantled their empire. Within months, what was once the Galactic Council's domain became the United Terran Dominion. No longer exiles, no longer outcasts, humanity was the law now. On the bridge of his flagship, Retribution, Grand Admiral Draven stared at the star map, watching as the last pockets of resistance faded. Hale approached, arms crossed. "It's done. The galaxy belongs to us. Draven nodded, but his expression remained unreadable. For now. She studied him for a moment. You don't sound satisfied. He exhaled. I should be, we won, but victory isn't the end, it's just the beginning. Hale smirked, then what's next? Draven turned away from the star map and looked out at the endless void. There are other galaxies. And the conquest would never stop. The United Terran Dominion had crushed the Galactic Council, reshaped the political order of the known universe, and stamped humanity's name onto the stars. But the war was far from over. Victory, Draven knew, was not an end. It was a transition. Conquest was easy, ruling was harder. The Dominion's fleets now patrolled once hostile territories, enforcing humanity's rule over species that had once scorned them. New governors were installed, resistance leaders executed, and planetary economies were reshaped to fuel the growing empire. Yet despite the overwhelming force the Dominion wielded, whispers of rebellion spread like a virus. It started in the outer colonies, small uprisings that were quickly crushed by Dominion shock troops. But then the resistance adapted. They used guerrilla tactics, sabotage, and precision strikes against critical supply lines. The rebels knew they could never match the Dominion in direct combat, but they didn't need to. All they had to do was bleed the new empire little by little. And someone was organizing them. Draven stood aboard the Retribution, gazing at the latest reports. The rebellion had started as a nuisance, but now entire sectors were on the verge of open war. They call themselves the Remnant, Hale said, standing beside him. Former council officers, deserters from our ranks, and a lot of angry civilians who think they can bring back the old order. Draven's jaw tightened. We burned the old order, they should know better. They don't care, Hale replied. They've turned you into the villain, the exiled warrior who came back to crush the free galaxy. Draven let out a dry chuckle. They would rather believe in a failed system than accept a stronger one. That's their weakness. Hale leaned against the command table. We need to make an example of them, show the galaxy that resistance is pointless. Draven's eyes darkened. I already have a plan. The Remnant had gathered in the Verono system, deep within the nebula that once served as the Council's secret emergency retreat. There, they thought they were safe. They had outdated Council warships, skilled officers, and enough firepower to challenge the Dominion. But they had made one fatal mistake. They thought they were fighting the same humanity the Council had exiled decades ago. They weren't. The Dominion fleet arrived in overwhelming force, cutting off all escape routes. The moment the Remnant realized they had been trapped, it was already too late. Draven led the assault personally. The Dominion's warships struck with terrifying precision, deploying cyber warfare tactics that shut down the rebels' defenses before they even had a chance to fire. What followed was not a battle. It was a slaughter. The rebel fleet, outnumbered and outmatched, was obliterated in a matter of hours. Then came the ground invasion. Dominion soldiers landed in force, sweeping through the Remnant's last stronghold with ruthless efficiency. The resistance fighters fought bitterly, but they were facing an enemy that had mastered war. The battle ended with their leaders executed in the public square, their rebellion crushed before it could spread further. Draven stood among the burning ruins of the Remnant's headquarters, watching as his soldiers secured the last prisoners. Some would be sent to labor camps. Others would be executed. Hale approached him, wiping blood from her gauntlet. Message received loud and clear, she said. Draven nodded. But this won't be the last time. There will always be those who resist. She smirked. Then we keep reminding them who rules the galaxy. Draven turned to the skis, watching the Dominion fleet hover like silent gods above the conquered world. The rebellion was crushed, but something still nagged at him. The Remnant had been well-funded, too well-funded, which meant someone else was pulling the strings. Someone out there wasn't just resisting. They were preparing for something bigger, and Draven intended to find out who. The Dominion had crushed the Remnant. Their fleet was scattered, their leaders executed, and their dream of restoring the old order reduced to ashes. Across the galaxy, planets bowed before humanity's rule, their populations too fearful to resist. And yet something felt wrong. Grand Admiral Cale Draven stood alone in his private quarters aboard the Retribution, staring at the star map flickering before him. His instincts, honed by decades of war, told him this wasn't over. The remnant had been too well supplied, too well coordinated. Someone had been feeding them resources, weapons, and intelligence. Someone powerful. His thoughts were interrupted by the soft chime of his private comm channel. Only one person had access to this frequency. Draven activated the link, and Commander Adrian Hale's face appeared on the holographic display. Her expression was unreadable, but there was a tension in her eyes that immediately put him on edge. "We have a problem," she said. Draven narrowed his eyes. "Report." Hale took a breath. "One of our patrol fleets went dark in the outer rim, the Vindicator, the Aegis, and 4 escort frigates." Draven frowned. "Pirates." "No, this wasn't a random attack." Hale tapped a control panel, sending a data feed to his console. "We intercepted a distress signal just before the ships vanished. You need to see this." Draven played the recording. Static, then a voice, distorted and broken, gasping through the interference. "They came from nowhere, system shutting down, engines offline, it's them. Oh God, we were wrong." A scream, a burst of static, then silence. Draven felt a chill run down his spine. For years, the Dominion had believed they were the apex predators of the galaxy. No species could rival them, no force could stand against them. But this was something different. Hale's voice was grim. The fleet didn't just get destroyed, it vanished. No wreckage, no escape pods, just gone. Draven clenched his jaw. "Who did this?" Hale hesitated. "We don't know, but whatever it was, our ships never even had a chance to fight back." Draven's mind raced. The Council was dead, the remnant was crushed, there should have been no one left capable of mounting an attack of this scale. Unless... An old rumor surfaced in his mind, a whisper from the past. Something the Council had feared but had never dared to speak of openly. A shadow in the void. A civilization older than the Council itself. A force that had watched from the darkness, waiting. Draven exhaled slowly. "Prepare the fleet. We're going to find out who thinks they can challenge the Dominion." Hale nodded. "Where do we start?" He turned back to the map, his eyes settling on a region of space that had been deemed forbidden even by the old Council. A place the ancients had called the Veil of Silence. He tapped the coordinates. "We start here." And deep in the void, something watched. Something old, something hungry. The Veil of Silence had been a mystery for centuries. Even during the height of the Galactic Council's rule, no ships had dared to venture inside. The few that had tried never returned. Officially, it was labeled as a dead sector, an empty stretch of void where no planets, stars, or stations existed. But the Council's records hinted at something far more sinister. There were old reports, redacted and buried deep in classified archives, of entire fleets disappearing near its borders. Now it was humanity's turn to uncover the truth. Grand Admiral Cale Draven stood on the command deck of the Retribution, staring at the swirling mass of darkness on the hollow map. No light escaped the veil. No signals emerged. It was a place untouched by time, and whatever had destroyed his missing fleet had come from inside. "Jump complete," a navigator reported. "We're approaching the edge of the veil." The Retribution and its escort fleet dropped out of FTL, emerging at the threshold of the unknown. The veil stretched before them like a vast, impenetrable wall of blackness. Sensors struggled to make sense of it, scanning and rescanning, only to return with conflicting data. Commander Adrian Hale studied the readings, frowning. "This isn't natural," she muttered. "It's like something is eating the signals before they can bounce back." Draven watched in silence. He could feel something out there. An ancient instinct buried deep in humanity's primal mind whispered a warning. Something was watching them. "Launch probes," he ordered. "Full spectrum scan." The drones shot forward, vanishing into the darkness. Seconds passed, then minutes. No response. Draven exhaled sharply. "Keep the fleet in formation. No one moves ahead of the flagship." A tense silence fell over the bridge as they drifted closer. Then the lights flickered. The hum of the ship's systems wavered as if something had touched them. A warning klaxon blared. "Energy spike detected." Hail cursed, where? The hollow map flickered and shifted. Something was moving in the veil. Not a single signal, not one enemy ship, but thousands. A vast, unseen force hidden in the void, shifting as if waking from slumber. And then, for the first time in recorded history, a transmission emerged from the veil. A voice, cold, hollow, ancient. We remember you. The bridge went deathly silent. Draven's blood ran cold. Who are you? He demanded. The voice came again. We remember you, fleshborn. We remember your kind. A deep, rumbling sound echoed through the comms, like the grinding of stone against metal, a sound that could have been a laugh or a threat. We remember when you were dust beneath our feet. Draven clenched his fists. Enough riddles, identify yourselves. The lights dimmed again, the ship shuddered, and then, for a brief moment, the darkness lifted. On the hollow screens, the fleet saw them, colossal, ancient warships unlike anything in Dominion records. Their hulls were black as the void itself, shifting and pulsing as if alive. Symbols older than any known language glowed with eerie alien energy. And at the center of it all, a massive structure loomed, an obsidian fortress floating in the abyss, large enough to dwarf any Dominion dreadnought. It had no visible engines, no apparent weapons, and yet it radiated an undeniable, crushing sense of power. The voice returned, deeper this time. We were here before your empires, before your wars, before your kind crawled from the mud. A pause. You exiled us, you thought we were gone. The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances. Draven narrowed his eyes. The council exiled us. The voice rumbled with what could only be amusement. The council were children pretending to rule a galaxy they did not understand. A cold realization settled over Draven. The Dominion had thought they had conquered the galaxy, that they were the pinnacle of power. But now, standing before the veil, he understood the truth. Humanity was not the first to be exiled, and they were not the first to return. The voice spoke one last time. Welcome back to the game. And then the attack began. The first strike was instantaneous. One moment the Retribution and its fleet hovered at the edge of the veil, engines burning steady, weapons primed. The next, half of their escort ships vanished, not destroyed, not shattered into wreckage, simply gone. The bridge exploded into chaos. Warning sirens screamed. Crew members shouted over one another, scrambling for answers. Draven remained still, watching the hollow screens as the Aegis, the Vindicator, and 3 frigates blinked out of existence. 1 second they were there, the next, nothing. No explosions, no wreckage, not even a heat signature. Hale's voice cut through the panic. What the hell just happened? Unknown weapon system, a lieutenant stammered. Our sensors didn't even register an attack. Draven's eyes snapped to the hollow map. The black, shifting shapes in the veil were moving now, encircling them. The Dominion fleet, once an unstoppable juggernaut, was now trapped. We were here before your kind. The ancient voice echoed through the ship again, cold and mocking. We watched you rise, we will watch you fall. Draven had heard enough. Fire everything, he ordered. The Retribution's rail cannons roared to life. The Dominion fleet unleashed a full barrage, titanic plasma bolts, magnetically accelerated slugs, and missile swarms. The weapons streaked toward the enemy like vengeful gods of war, lighting up the darkness with fire and fury. And then nothing. The moment the attacks hit the enemy ships, they were swallowed by the void. No explosions, no impact, as if the weapons had simply ceased to exist. Hale swore, they're phasing through reality, she muttered. It's like they're out of sync with. A second attack came. Another 3 ships disappeared. Draven didn't flinch. He had expected this. Signal the fleet, he said, voice cold as steel. Full retreat, get us out of here, now. The navigation officer's hands flew across the console, attempting an FTL jump. The ship shuddered violently. The lights flickered. The sound of groaning metal filled the air. Jump failed, the officer gasped. Something's blocking us. Draven clenched his fists. They had walked into a trap, a perfect trap. The Dominion had conquered the known galaxy, crushed every enemy in their path, and now, for the first time, they had encountered something beyond their understanding. Something that saw them not as conquerors, but as insects. Hale turned to Draven, eyes filled with something he had never seen in her before, fear. "What do we do?" she asked. Draven didn't hesitate. "We break their trap." He activated the fleet-wide comms. "All ships, full power to engines, ramming speed." A stunned silence filled the bridge. Hale's mouth opened slightly. "You're insane." Draven's expression remained unreadable. "They're treating us like a puzzle to be solved, like prey. We're going to remind them who we are." A slow, cold smile formed on Hale's lips. She understood. Dominion ships weren't just designed for war. They were designed for brutality. Humanity had mastered the art of battle through sheer necessity because for centuries every other species had underestimated them. It was time to teach that lesson again. "All ships," Draven repeated. "Charge straight through them. No evasive maneuvers, no hesitation. If they want to test us, let's show them what happens." The orders were given. The Dominion fleet surged forward, burning at maximum thrust. The massive warships ignored the enemy's illusions, ignored their impossible tricks, and simply charged. The alien ships reacted, shifting, twisting, attempting to reposition, but they had miscalculated. They weren't facing another civilization bound by logic and diplomacy. They were facing humans, and humans were willing to break every rule to win. The Retribution smashed through the first enemy ship like a hammer against glass. The Dominion dreadnought's reinforced hull barely even took damage as it plowed straight through, sending the alien vessel spiraling into the abyss. The rest of the fleet followed suit. What should have been a massacre, what was a massacre, had turned into something else, something the enemy hadn't expected. A brawl, and humans thrived in brawls. The once impossible, untouchable enemy now struggled. They had relied on their tricks for too long. They had expected fear. They had expected confusion. They had not expected raw, unrelenting violence. Within minutes, the Dominion fleet broke through the veil, leaving fire and wreckage in their wake. The moment they were free, the Retribution's FTL drive roared to life, and the fleet vanished into the void. Escape, but not victory. Draven stood on the bridge, breathing heavily, staring at the veil on the view screen as it shrank into the distance. They had survived, but now they knew the truth. They were not alone, and the enemy they had just encountered. A final transmission crackled through the speakers, the last words of the unknown force that had nearly wiped them out. "We remember you." A pause. "And now you will remember us." Draven exhaled, his grip tightening around the command rail. "This war," he murmured, "just changed." And for the first time in history, humanity wasn't fighting for conquest. They were fighting to survive. The fleet had escaped, but the Dominion was forever changed. For the first time since humanity had seized control of the galaxy, they had been humbled. Their weapons had failed. Their ships had vanished like dust in the wind. And the enemy had let them go, not because they were weak, because they weren't ready yet. Grand Admiral Cale Draven stood in the war room aboard the Retribution, staring at the silent hollow map. The veil of silence loomed at the edges of known space, unchanged, undisturbed, hiding whatever horror lay within. They had not won. They had barely survived. Hale's voice cut through the tense quiet. "We need to tell High Command." Draven didn't look at her. "Tell them what? That the invincible Dominion fleet was slaughtered like cattle, that we ran." She exhaled sharply. "They need to know what's out there." Draven turned, his cold gray eyes locking onto hers. "You don't think they already do?" Hale's brow furrowed.